Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Sally. This is Barbara and Laura. We're here at El Cajon Sunvac, and we didn't have anything to talk to you about today, so we decided to talk about boxed corners because it came up on Sunday when we were making our bag during our FOV Club presentation. So Laura is going to make an attempt to talk to you about box corners. So go ahead.
Okay, we have.
Which camera do you want to be on? Three?
Three.
How's that?
Yeah, three's
okay,
good.
good.
Okay, I'll move my pen a little bit. All right. So these are not real bags. We're just using scraps of fabric to talk about how to box corners. Typically, to make a bag, one way to do this is you sew across the bottom, down the two sides, and then you can either mark or cut squares out of the corner depending on how big you want the bottom of the bag to be. So if you make a 1-inch square, you're going to have a 2-inch bag bottom because you got 1 inch on this side and 1 inch on this side. Now the important thing to remember when you're doing that is you want to mark from the stitching line, not from the edge of the fabric. So let's make this one 1.5 inches. Now you can that's nice and dark. You can just mark.
I moved over to one.
Okay.
There you go.
You can just mark on one corner and then come over here 1.5 inches from the stitching lines. Mark your second corner, and you could cut these out and then sew them together. So that's one way I'm going to show you. So I'll cut out one corner. And you don't have to worry about clipping the corners in the middle because you're cutting the whole thing out anyway. And then what you do is open it up like so, and you bring your center seams together, press them in opposite directions. Oh, can you turn that off? Sorry.
It's alright. We're very popular around here.
It's in my front zipper pocket. Thank you. Okay, and so you'll see that the corners, the points, should come together cleanly, and then you would just sew at 1/4 inch, or we're gonna mock sew here. I'm good at that. So all the way around your.
We should have a mocktail to go with our mock sewing.
Yeah, we should. Okay, so there's my 1/4 inch seam, and then when I turn this out,
You have a box corner.
there I have a nice box corner, and the two sides line up nicely. Now when you're doing this technique and you have a seam on the bottom, when you line up your fabrics, you should be able to feel the bottom seam and the side seam nesting together. And when you do that, that's what gives you oops, wrong corner. That's what gives you this nice
Yeah, we're
alignment
going over to one.
right here.
Yeah.
So that gives you that. And then you have a nice box corner, and we made it 1.5 inches So when you measure this,
Down. Thank you.
this is 4 inches. Interesting, I thought it would be 3. Oh, because we're
Oh,
going
'cause
across
it's
the
a hypotenuse.
Yeah. And
A
the
squared plus
hypotenuse-
B squared equals C squared.
Yep, the hypotenuse is larger. So you can always use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out exactly how big you want your box bottom to be. But, okay, so that's one technique. Now, another technique. I'm going to unsew this one because I need the pins. Another technique is you simply open this up, okay? Your seams will nest together down here. You're gonna have a little bit of a burble right there at the top. It's a technical word, but you should be able to get it to a point. And then what you do is you're going to measure however far you want, so we'll say this is 2 inches, and then you would draw your line. Where'd my pen go? Well, we'll do 1.5 inches because that's what we had done before. Okay, and I'm measuring from this point right here, not the end of the fabric, but I'm measuring from this point where the stitching line
From the
comes
stitching
together.
line.
Right. So I'm measuring from there 1.5 inches, and you draw your line straight across. And then you would sew on that line. The difficulty with this is even if you can feel the nesting of the seams, sometimes your ruler can get a little crooked. So bring your 45-degree line.
Move your up.
bring-
Right. There.
Okay. So bring the 45-degree line on your ruler to one edge. You'll see it meets right here, wherever you're going. So if you're going for 1.5 inches, you bring that here, bring the 45-degree line down until it matches one side seam. Now your line, when you draw it in place, will be straight. And you can sew on that line, and then you can see it makes a difference. This line was crooked, where this one is straight. You sew on that line, and you'll end up with a nice boxed corner. Here we're gonna do our mock sewing again. And this one right on the line. Okay. So there I've sewn it, and when I turn it out, you can see, again, I've got a nice boxed corner. Now this one, because I drew the line,
Using
1.5 inches from the tip of the thing. This one looks smaller to me. So this one is 3 inches.
Interesting.
Yeah.
because your stitching line was different. It went to the point, which is longer.
Oh.
Yeah, you didn't go to the stitching line, I think.
Well,
No,
you're
she
right.
went to the stitching
And the
line,
other
but it's
thing-
on the point instead of squared off.
Well, the difference too is here I'm stitching at the 1.5 inches mark, where here, when I put this together, even though I cut out 1.5 inches, I'm stitching
It
a
actually
1/4
went-
inch away.
It actually went, it was like doing it at 2 inches.
Yeah, because I'm stitching away from the
Well, the
drawn line.
square root of
Yeah.
9, the square root of 9 plus the square root of 18, which 3 squared is 9, so 9 plus 9 is 18. The square root of 18 is 4.2, by the way.
Okay.
So it should have been around 4.
Yeah.
Alright then.
Okay. But I think it's just because you're stitching away
Yeah, you're taking
from...
a half an inch away.
Right. Right. Oh, I've got it in my eye. Okay. Now, the question remains, what do you do with this extra fabric? Some people cut it off. Some people leave it in place. If you leave it in place, you can either fold it up and tack it to the side seam, or you can fold it to the bottom and tack it to the bottom, or just leave it in place.
You know, when in that pattern we did on Sunday,
Mm-hmm.
they used an interesting technique where they used fusible interfacing on the side seams to keep the side seams open.
Oh yes, that's right.
So
remember
I
that.
would suggest using fusible interfacing to
to keep the tab
fuse it down to keep the tab down.
I like that. That's a nice idea.
Because the fusible interfacing worked and also gives you a little bit more stability.
And it gives you more
The
stability
fusible
on the bottom.
interfacing, so you ironed your side seam open and then put fusible interfacing on each side to hold the side seams open,
right.
which
Well-
really worked nicely on the quilted bag. So, because you know it's hard to press a quilted seam open.
Yeah.
So using fusible interfacing to hold that open was genius. Really,
Well, and if
didn't
you're
you
gonna
think?
Yeah.
if you're gonna do that with this,
Move down a
um,
little bit because I can't see.
if you're gonna do that with this, where you're gonna press the seam open, I would clip the corner.
Yeah.
You would have to do that, but you don't have to press the seam open. But I'm
Right.
just saying to hold that down, pressing it up or pressing it down, either way, just putting a piece of like a 2-inch square of fusible interfacing to hold that
So it doesn't
triangle
move on
up
you.
so it doesn't move. Or even if you're cutting it at an inch or however inch, to hold that up one direction or another, it'd be what I would do now after making that bag,
That's a good idea.
because it'll make your bag more stable.
Mhm.
It'll hold that corner nice and even because you can just fuse that, and it'll fuse that seam
it's more
up one
structured.
way or another, and it'll hold that. I think then it'll keep it
Keeps it more stable.
more
don't you think?
stable.
Yeah.
More stable, and if you wash it, it'll keep it in the same place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now another technique that I saw. This is not of my original making, and I'm not sure I can do it with a mock sewing technique. But what they did was they have both corners cut out, and this is before they sewed the bag sides and bottom together. So they came down, they sewed here, and then they pivoted this and made this one continuous line of sewing, and then those two pieces, I can't do that with the mock sewing, but then those two pieces are together so that when you separate it,
They match up.
this seam already matches up.
So it's basted
think I've
together,
seen that.
sort of.
Yeah,
I think I've seen that done before.
yeah,
That makes sense.
right. Now, another way to do this is you can,
Well, I remember when I was doing the squares together and piecing, where I was showing you that made it, when you were piecing stuff together, if you sew it like that and then you fold it, it matches really well then
okay.
when you sew the rows together.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy how I had hardly any seams that didn't
Didn't
match perfectly
Right.
when I sewed
You
my
chain
rows
pieced
together.
them
So I
like
was
that.
chain piecing together and then
Mhm.
sewed the rows together.
Oh yeah, I leave them attached.
Yeah.
I leave them attached.
but I
I've seen that on quilt
but I
videos.
had it really close. I didn't go very far. I just kept them really closely attached.
Yeah.
And then I was surprised at how well that worked.
That's good.
Anyway,
Okay, so I've drawn my 1.5 square on this side. I'm gonna flip it over. I'm gonna measure out my 1.5. My hands hardly see the stitching lines on this one. I used a variegated thread, so okay. So there's my 1.5. On this side, I'm gonna draw my lines. Pink pen on pink fabric might not show up too much, but we're gonna see. So I'm drawing the box on both sides. And the reason I'm doing that is because now, when I open it up, I can see
Down
if my
a little
lines
bit.
match up. So
There
I
we
can
go.
see that my lines match up. And if I can see this corner, this point is off, this point is off, I know I need to make a slight adjustment until those corners
Match
are
up.
right in the crease. And then I sew directly on that line. And I'd get a nice box corner. So I like doing that technique instead of the feeling for it and then putting the ruler
Yeah.
this way. Okay. Another thing you can do, same kind of thing where you're cutting out the corner. This is the box bag
I'll go to
template.
3 because you can see it
Oops, let
better.
me turn it around so you can actually read it.
I'm on 3.
Okay, so this is the box bag template. Ta-da. You can see that. Now, this has a big square in the middle, and it has little grooves right here in the center. You see that? I don't know if you can see those little grooves. Well, you can determine how big you want your corner to be, and you're going to turn this around. There we go. And if I'm doing 1.5, I have the 1.5 inch mark here, the 1.5 inch mark there, and then
Now,
I
are
can,
you supposed to measure from the stitching line or from the outside fabric?
the stitching line. And then pretend this is a rotary cutter.
I was gonna say I don't know where my rotary cutter
That's
went.
okay. We can take the rotary cutter then and go right into that groove. See, it goes right into that groove. And then come this direction with the rotary cutter. It goes into this groove. And that groove is just enough to let the curve of the blade pass through, but it's still going to cut to this point. And then you would remove the square just like you did on this side, and use the same technique to make your box corners. Okay, so that's those. Now, let's go to this camera. Another technique I saw,
Up a bit, I think.
okay, so I have my fabric here. Maybe we can zoom out a little bit.
You'll have to lift the camera up.
Oh, okay.
Manual zoom.
Manual
How's that?
zoom?
Okay, so I'm gonna fold my fabric up, and then I'm gonna take the bottom, okay, I'm gonna crease my bottom, personal problem I have, alright, and then I'm gonna fold this down, let's see, I'll just fold it down 1 inch. Fold down the other side 1 inch. I put the wrong side up, but that's okay. This should be the right.
Maybe we want to have a
you wanna
inside
have
out
an
bag.
inside out bag? Okay. And now you take this. I have to have a straight sewing machine. Okay. And we're gonna sew our 1/4 inch seam all the way up. I've never actually used this technique, but I've seen it quite a bit. So we'll sew our 1/4 inch seam like so.
Move up a little bit. There we go.
Okay. I'll do one more. Okay. So I've made the tuck, I've made my seam, and now when I turn it out, I have a box corner, and the tuck that we made is already stitched inside the side pleat. So there's my box bottom, and that tuck
Huh.
goes up the side.
That's
And
cool.
it's like already sewn in.
It's already sewn in.
Huh.
You don't have to do anything.
That's a
And-
neater one.
And the seam you have is just a straight seam, and you still end up with the box bottom. On the inside, it's just square across. On the outside, you have a nice little tuck. Like so. What do you think of that one?
I like that one. And I wonder if you could get it, you could leave it,
Now, I think
that
a
would be fun
1-inch
if you did a,
fold-
if you did a French seam and folded it and stitched it up the outside, then you could have the fold on the inside
yeah.
and it would be plain on the outside.
You could do that.
That'd be fun.
So I kind of thought that was a cool way to do it.
I think it's a real cool way to do it. Or decorative stitches up the side and make it flat.
Yeah. Okay. Barbara, what other techniques do you have?
I can't think of any more. Most of the time I use my box template to do. It's just, sometimes you have to use scissors, because the ones I was doing, I was using Annie's.
Yeah, and it's so thick.
And both sides of Annie's, it's a thick, so I could get most of the way except for in that corner.
Now
'Cause-
that's a good thing that you bring up, because the ones that I've been showing you with just the plain fabric would be like with your linings.
Yeah.
So with your lining fabric, you don't have any batting in it. If this is the outside of the bag and you fold it up, you're gonna fold it wrong sides together. Now we don't have any seam on the bottom here, but we wanna make box corners. You could use the box bag template. Okay, first I have to make my side seams. So, these are a little bigger than a 1/4 inch, but,
We won't tell.
well, it's a bag, I want a 1/2 inch seam. Okay. So here, I won't sew the whole thing, I'll just sew a couple of pins. You know, this mock sewing is kinda cool because then I can unsew pretty easily.
Yeah.
A lot easier than if I had real stitches in there. Okay, so there we have our side seam. And now when I open this side seam up to make my box bag, my box corner, I do get a point where the side seam runs to the end, but I don't have anything to match this width.
Yeah.
So it's kind of higgledy-piggledy. It
Yeah,
could
that's
be crooked
really
very
awkward.
easily. Even if I get the 1/4 inch line,
Because
From my
you would
ruler.
definitely have to use the 45-degree angle on that one.
you would.
But you still have to get it lined up right, and I
and
think
you
it's
have
hard
to
to
make
get
sure
it
that
right.
the line you're measuring is going directly from that point out.
Yeah.
It's still kind of hard to get it perfect, but using the 45-degree line helps. Also, doing the technique where we mark the corner on each side, that's helpful, because then you can see where your corner
I think
is.
using the box bag template or something like that is
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
better.
And the box
And you
bag
don't have to
template would
cut
be
it. You
really
can
good.
you can mark it if you want instead of cutting with it.
True. Now, in this case, because I've only sewn the side seam, my 1.5 inch mark, if that's the size you want, starts at the seam line and then goes to the bottom of the bag. Because
Otherwise,
you don't
in
have,
order to have it balanced, because if you're
right,
if
you
you're
Yeah.
going to
don't have
the
a
edge of
seam
the
on
bag,
bottom.
if you're going to the edge of the bag, then that's not square.
No, you are
You-
going
I
to
mean,
the edge of the bag.
If you go to the edge of the
Where the seam
where
is.
the if you
over
if,
here.
right if you go
Oh no,
if you
then
go
you're
include
getting
this
something really weird.
yeah if you go to the
So you
I
go
can't
to
see
the
the edge of the bag there.
Oh, Sorry.
If you
Okay.
if you include the seam allowance in your
Then you're really only cutting off this little
correct,
rectangle.
so then
Yeah.
it's not a
and
square.
you want it to be
So
square.
you want to make sure you don't include the seam allowance.
Right. So you start with your marking. Here's my inch
Or
and a half
at the
marking.
bottom, you go an extra half an inch or whatever your seam allowance was for at the bottom of the bag on that fold, and include the seam allowance and then make
Yeah.
a bigger.
So like here it's 2 inches. I would come up to 2 inches.
Correct. Yeah.
No, that doesn't work because I still have a rectangle here.
Oh, so that's still not going to be square then.
It's still not square. No, you have to go from the
Interesting.
seam allowance and the
Wow,
bottom
that
of
I
the
would have
bag.
thought that would have been square, so that still doesn't make it square. The proportion is not.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Huh.
So in order to get the square here, you have to go from the seam allowance. But this would be a good place to either mark or cut using the box bag
Mhm.
template. And I like the box bag template because you know it's square when you get both of those markings on there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's nice.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Now,
Now, the problem that you had on the bag on Sunday was your seams
is
were
the
graded.
side seams graded, which makes it
Yeah.
funky, so it's not really a square box.
Right. So the problem
So could
she
you make
had-
your markings before you graded them?
but
Well,
you
it's
still
not-
don't
you're-
have a square.
It's still not a square because
Oh.
your side seam's graded. So your side seam's coming at a ever so slight angle, so it's not really going to be noticeable. So,
Yeah, so instead of going straight, her side seams, and this is exaggerated, but her side seams were coming out at an angle.
so it's not really a box; it's more like a parallelogram or a.
Yeah.
And there is a way, I did have a pattern, I meant to look it up and then I forgot because I forgot what we were talking about today. That's my brain.
So did I until we got here.
So, this is a graded seam.
Up
So
a little bit. Yeah. So the
Okay.
graded seam, so it's
The graded seam, it's at an angle from the edge, and the reason you would want to do this is because when you make a boxed bottom, I have no easy way of showing you this, but when you make a boxed bottom, what happens is this part is smaller, the bottom becomes smaller than the top because you're bringing it in by this much. So the bottom would be smaller, your seam's over here, the bag
Oh.
tends to flare. So you grade the seam in a little bit so that when you make this box bottom, now the corner of the box bottom should match the top of the grade of the seam allowance.
why is the box bottom bringing?
Because you're taking in the bottom, but you're not taking in the top. You have a confused look.
I do because I don't really recognize that you're taking in the bottom.
Okay.
So you're making the bottom smaller when you're boxing the bottom?
Yep.
Huh. Interesting.
I'll show you again on this one. That's a good demonstration. So we'll go to the one that we've cut out already. Well, we can do both of them. All right. So I'm going to
Ooh. That's not good.
sew this one
That's
together.
all blurry.
I don't know that I have enough sewing machine over here to do this.
So you don't have enough sewing machine over there to do that? So let me get this straight mathematically. Oh, I forgot this is here. Okay.
So there's one corner. I'm gonna come over here to the second corner. Now mind you, this corner is gonna be smaller because it's a different technique that we're using. And I'm gonna sew this one together. Well, I'll go ahead and sew it a 1/4 inch away from the line, then it'll be the same size and you can see what I'm talking about. Let me get some straight sewing machines here.
This doesn't make any sense to me.
One more. So there I have sewn both corners, okay? And right now, my sides are this big. I'm gonna turn the
Oh,
bag
because you pulled in the corners.
right side out. And when I do that, and I poke out my corners on both sides, you can see my base is this big. My top is still this big. So the
Well,
bag
but
flares out.
okay, but your top should be going square. I mean, technically your top should be square.
Well,
Technically the bag
if you
bag
had
should be square.
if you had
Should
sides,
stand up square.
if you had additional seams here,
Right,
it could be square.
right.
But
So
then you have
technically-
to have a box top, and if you want a zipper or you'd have to have a placket across the top in order to do that.
Well,
If you're just sewing it like this, which most bags do, it's gonna be
Flared out.
flared out.
it's going to be flared out more than a quarter inch.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
yeah,
looks
your
like a
pattern
couple
didn't grade
inches.
very much.
Well, I mean, it would grade out more, way more than a quarter inch then if you're.
Right. So
But then you would have no room to get in the top of the bag if you grade that all the way up so that it's flat at
Depends
the
on-
top of the bag.
depends on how big the bag is. On this one, you're right. This was a big box bottom for this little teeny tiny bag. But what you do on
God, she
a
rips that
graded
stuff
seam.
out fast.
Yeah, you're just a great unsewer.
Okay,
Um,
I know, right? Okay, so on the graded seam, you can still use the box bag template, again, from your stitching line, so wherever it hits your stitching line. When you cut this out, this line is not square. So, let's just show you that. I'm just gonna draw it. From my stitching line.
So are you gonna do a square, or are you gonna do it square from the?
Well, I'll show you what happens. So, there's my square here. You have to turn it over and do the square on the opposite side. Okay, I've got an inch and a half there.
Right.
Okay. Now with this one, you're pulling it out so that these corners are pointed. Your peak in the middle will not be flat. So you pull this out, matching those points here, and then you have your line here that you can sew across. Typically, if you had cut the box corners out, which I didn't, but if you cut
Pull
the
up.
corners, if you cut the corners out before you pull it open, the peak in the middle, this ridge right here,
Yeah.
will not lie flat. Like, it won't be straight across like this. It will be peaked. You just still want to sew straight across. And then you'll end up with a corner. And it's just that when you're putting this on there, the point of this should match the point where the grade comes in. Does that make sense?
Kinda, but I'm not sure what the right way to do it is. 100%.
I had one
They have
pattern
your-
that did it this way, and it explained all of that. It was kind of interesting, and I had a square bag when I was done, without having to do the side seamy things.
Huh.
So, it was kind of nice. Okay, that's all I have.
Interesting.
I'm gonna unsew quickly. That's way
So
more faster.
share with us in the comments your experiences with squaring corners when you're doing a
Bag.
box bag with that it's tapered. I've never really had that many patterns where they taper the
I thought they
bag.
had that one. I liked it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay.
So
You have
to
anything
do
else
the,
to
the tuck method,
All right.
we'll do that one more time. You put your right side out, and then you lay your ruler up there. Fold this down.
So you still cut a square corner out
Not for
if
the
you're
tuck
great
method.
for your
Oh,
grading.
graded seams, yeah.
Okay.
And then pinch this so the other side has the same amount of tuck. And then
You just sew the side seams.
you just sew the side seams.
I'll have to try that on a small bag.
It's a nice technique. I haven't actually used it, but I like it. I may use it now. And then here's my side seam on this side.
It actually might work better on the graded seam thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it might.
it could. And also my side seam on this side.
So would you make your fabric, say the small bag you wanted to make 10 by 12,
Mm-hmm.
and to do that you would just use the same size? In other words, if you're going to do that different than what they cut out the squares, would you extend that by 2 inches?
Do this,
Yeah.
I mean, the tuck method. The nice thing about this, since you're not cutting anything, it's easy to take it out and try again if you don't like how it is.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to answer your question though.
Because
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, I get it
you're
now.
using up
You're
the fabric
saying-
and the
You're
base of
saying
it.
this is 10 by 12
Yeah,
and you want that 2-inch bottom. Yes, you would extend the fabric here for the length.
so
Okay.
you could do it 12 by 12 and it'd come out the right size.
Right. So
I
now
don't know
we're
if
gonna
you need
turn
to
it
extend
out.
the fabric.
Yeah, that I don't know.
And here we have our box bottom on the side of our bag. Now obviously sewing with pins it doesn't get super flat. But I
No.
think that's kinda cute
Yeah,
and super easy. And if you don't like it, you just
Rip it
unpin it,
out.
unsew it. And yeah. Actually that's a good sized bag right there.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
cute. I like that fabric. It's in, I
Very
don't know
cute.
why, but that fabric has not sold well.
It's really cute.
It's super cute.
I like it. I think you make a great apron or placemats.
Yeah.
Birthday party placemats. That would be nice. Okay.
All right.
That's all
Well,
I have.
that's all we have to say.
What's your favorite method for boxing bags corners?
And for that matter,
Share in the comments.
ask a question in the comments, and we'll be glad to try and not give you the right answer.
We're really good at that.
No, we'll give you the right answer.
Well, we'll give you an
We'll
answer.
give you an answer.
Oh, and one other thing, these little corners you took out, they make great starter ender pieces. You know I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Laura's the starter ender queen.
Yep.
She is. All right. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being patient with us. And I am going to sign